What if Tanjiro transforms into a demon and Nezuko becomes a demon slayer? Starting off with the assumption that Tanjiro stayed behind that fated night and Nezuko was the one who took refuge in the cabin below the mountains. The next morning, Nezuko climbs up the mountain to find her family massacred and her loving big brother turned into a flesh-craving demon. As soon as Nezuko tries to approach Tanjiro, he'll overpower her and devouring her for the first chance he gets. Pretty anticlimactic, right? Well, that's actually the most realistic outcome, as Nezuko's chance of overpowering Tanjiro as a demon are very slim. But we're here on behalf of the Lord of Fan Theories, so I shall it not disappoint you. Let's say that Giyu arrived a bit early this time and saved Nezuko from Tanjiro, all while muzzling the poor boy, just like he did with Nezuko in the original story. Nezuko, using her wits and the strong forehead she inherited from her mother, tries to outmaneuver Giyu, and her dedication towards saving her sibling strikes a chord in Giyu's conscience. He spares the two and writes a letter of recommendation to Urokodaki, who now expects Nezuko as a student instead of Tanjiro. Determined to prove her strength, Nezuko, on her way to Mount Sagiri, encounters the same demon, but this time, Tanjiro would take on the demon all by himself, because he would actually be a stronger demon compared to Nezuko. Urokodaki would be flabbergasted, seeing the demon who fights his own kind, and will look forward to teaching Nezuko. She would easily move on through the final selection process, and master the art of water breathing to become a demon slayer. Although everything seems to be going fine so far, but Nezuko lacks one major asset that helped Tanjiro all throughout his journey. That is his overpowered nose. Without Tanjiro's enhanced sense of smell, it would be impossible for her to run into Muzan, who will go about with his murderous way with his pretend family. This event actually took out a huge chunk of the original story, as Nezuko would never meet Tamayo or fight Suzumaru and Yahaba. This will definitely hinder her character growth and also reduce her chances of ever defeating Muzan, but it is what it is. So she'll just move on to her next mission, the Suzumi Mansion arc, where she'll encounter her new friends, or we can better coin it as inappropriate work friends, Inosuke and Zenitsu. As usual, Zenitsu would be dumbfounded by Nezuko's beauty and throw in a marriage proposal the very next second, which Nezuko would slap down in an instant and move on to defeat the false upper moon. This will go smoothly, but problems will arise in their next mission, which is the Mount Natakumo arc. While the duo of Nezuko and Tanjiro will fight Rui, this will definitely not be enough, as Nezuko doesn't have a shred of knowledge about sun breathing, due to her being a toddler when Tanjiro passed down the knowledge which saved Tanjiro from the demon's deadly web. However, as Rui will entangle the siblings in this web, Tanjiro will be shaken to his very core, peeking at his sister's death, which will allow him to access his memories as a human and recall the Hinokami Kagura. Now, as Tanjiro isn't trained in swordsmanship, he will channel this knowledge into his blood demon art called Scorching Earth, raising him to the level of Daki and Gyutaro. He will force his way out of Rui's webs and burn off his hands, allowing Nezuko to decapitate him with the 10th form of water-breathing Constant Flux. The unusual siblings will be captured by the Hashiras and taken back to the mansion, where all the Hashiras will accept them for the time being. The trio will set out for their next mission on the Mugen train, which will go a lot better than the original storyline, as this time, Nezuko, Inosuke, and Zenitsu will take down the Lower Moon 1, while Rengoku and Tanjiro stall Akaza till sunrise, who will severely injure Rengoku, but won't be able to kill him this time around. Although Tanjiro is an Upper Moon level demon, he is still no match for the top 3 because he didn't go through the Slater training. Hence, the duo of Tanjiro and Rengoku will fail to stop Akaza from escaping. After recovering from their injuries of the previous battle, Tenjin will recruit Nezuko to infiltrate the entertainment district, but Inosuke and Zenitsu will offer their services as well, due to Zenitsu being in love with her and Inosuke being just plain dumb as usual. They'll encounter the duo of Daki and Gyutaro engaging in a death battle. Nezuko will attain her Demon Slayer mark, after which they'll be able to cut down Daki and Gyutaro's heads simultaneously, like in the original series. But this time around, Gyutaro, just a few seconds before his beheading, will throw out his poisonous sickles towards Zenitsu and Makio, infecting them. As Tanjiro cannot burn the poison out, they're going to die. All the Slayers back at HQ will be briefed about the Demon Slayer mark, and they will start training immediately to attain it. Muzan would get extremely resentful of the death of Gyutaro, as he wasn't able to kill even one Hashira level Slayer. This would cause him to ignore Gyoko's info on the Swordsmith village amid his his frustration. Muzan would kill Gyoko on the spot due to his insubordination and order Kokushibo to go out on a hunt and kill as many villagers as possible to gather the attention of the Demon Slayer Corps. All the Hashiras, baffled by the number of deaths, would conclude that this was definitely the work of multiple upper-level demons and accept Muzan's challenge at face value. Muzan, frustrated due to the years of hiding, would not hesitate to make an opening, which would result in the end of the Demon Slayer Corps once and for all. The Demon Slayer Corps with their info will locate Muzan's hideout, which was specifically posted to lure them in. All the Hashiras and their underlings will then slowly close onto a secluded village on a mountain where they suspected the hideout of Muzan to be, but in a very expected twist, they'll immediately get teleported to different areas of the Infinity Castle by Nakime. Tanjiro, Nezuko, and Giyu will be teleported to fight Akaza. Inosuke, Kanao, and Shinobu will battle Doma. Gyomei and Sanemi will battle Kokushibo. Genya and Rengoku will face off against Hantengu. Mitsuri and Obanai will take on Nakime, who is now promoted to Upper Moon, and Tokido will face off against Kaigaku. All these battles will happen at once while Muzan watches from his throne in the center of the castle. However, what Muzan did not calculate was that Ubuyushiki could predict the future, and he contacted Tamayo previously, who had semi-perfected a drug to turn Muzan back into a human. She would also get teleported into the mansion, where she would sneak up on Muzan, incapacitate him with flesh seeds, like in the original series, and inject him with the cure. Muzan would immediately form a cocoon and start generating antibodies to fight the medicine, which will be complete quickly this time around, as the medicine is semi-perfect due to the fact that Tanjiro hasn't sent Tamayo any blood samples for experimentation like he did in the original series. However, Muzan is weak quite a bit, but still heals up a level powerful enough to defeat all the Slayers. However, in a turn of events, he notices that Tanjiro, Nezuko, and Giyu have defeated Akaza and are waiting outside his cocoon to finish him. He laughs off the trio and begins to narrate the painful fate that awaits them. He then reveals the tentacles on his back, which go around in their wacky movements and knock away Giyu and Nezuko, who block them with their blades. Tanjiro tries to get a hit in with his Scorched Earth Blood Demon Art, but is punched through a wall. The future of the Slayers seems bleak, but suddenly the Kasugai Crow enters the room, announcing that Kokushibo has been killed by Gyomei with the casualty of Sanemi, and Doma has also been defeated, with the casualties being Kanao and Shinobu. Tokido then bursts through one of the doors, revealing that he defeated Kaigaku as well. Muzan will be shocked at the fact that not one but 4 of his upper demon moons are dead. He would rage on with his tentacles on the 4 remaining fighters, but the other Hashiras would arrive just at the time to save them. Muzan's biggest shock will manifest into a reality when the Infinity Castle would start disappearing, confirming the fact Nakime is dead. A Kasugai will appear, announcing that Rengoku has defeated Hantengu with the casualty of Genya, and henceforth helped Mitsuri and Obanai to take down Nakime. With only 30 minutes left till sunrise and Muzan still in denial about how close he is to dying, he will push his body to the limits and try to overpower the remaining Slayers. But as he does so, 5 of Muzan's hearts will explode, along with 4 of his brains, revealing that Tamayo's medicine was not meant to cure him, but rather decompose his specific organs at a very crucial time. Gyomei, sensing what just happened, will command everyone to attack. Muzan, realizing he has no time to regenerate those organs, will try to go back into a protective cocoon, but Giyu and Rengoku will slash it down before it can fully cover Muzan. After an intense 30 minutes that would be equivalent to an eternity for our heroes, the Demon Slayers will suffer numerous casualties, and with the help of Nezuko and Tanjiro holding off the Demon King till the first ray of sunlight hits him, they'll win this race against the time. However, this isn't a happy ending for everyone, as Tanjiro's skin would start to burn off. He would utter his last words, "We did it," while in Nezuko's arms, and plummet to the ground, turning into ash. One of Giyu reached Mount Kumotori a day prior. Giyu reaches the Kamado home, sensing the presence of a baffling threat, and runs to confront it. So Giyu confronts Muzan and immediately determines that he isn't going to last even a minute in front of the Demon King himself. His cat-like eyes instill fear in every cell of Giyu's body as he unsheaths his sword. Knowing that he is no match for Muzan, he prioritizes the escape of the Kamado household, who are in a state of shock while he holds back the venom. But who are we kidding? Even if Giyu used every form of every breath in the Demon Slayer universe, he still wouldn't be able to inflict a single cut on Muzan, considering the water pillar hasn't even manifested the Demon Slayer mark itself yet. So our socially awkward Hashira is in for a mercy kill. Muzan's mood and his decision to toy with him would determine his death. But Muzan, apart from being the shape-shifting narcissist that he is also an opportunist, so he might even offer Giyu a job in the moons, which will result in a rejection and subsequent battering of the Hashira. So an unanswered question still looms in our heads: why was Muzan on Mount Kumotori in the first place? For the most part, if you paid about 10% attention, you would know that Muzan has only one goal: resistance against the sun, which can be only achieved with the blue spider lilies, so he might as well be there to look for them. But coming back to the situation at hand, after killing Giyu, Muzan will definitely end up going on a killing spree and murdering the Kamados, turning one of the siblings into a flesh-craving demon. So we made a full circle and came back to the situation depicted in the original plot. Tanjiro's family is dead once again, with him left to fend off the world and protect one of his siblings who had turned into a demon. However, this time, after Kaguya is informed of Giyu's demise and Muzan's presence by the Kasugai crows, he will most definitely send in a barrage of pillars to investigate and hopefully end the Demon King's reign of terror. They will in turn run into the red-haired boy Tanjiro and his demon accomplice, and judging by their reactions when they originally met Tanjiro and Nezuko in the anime, they will most probably end up killing the demon without a second thought. But Tanjiro would most likely put up a decent fight before going down and impressing the pillar he encounters. The most likely outcome is Tanjiro being recruited by the Flame Hashira, Rengoku Kyojuro. And after that, he would go on to learn the various flame-breathing forms, following a slightly different path than in the original manga. Although all of these efforts would go to waste, Tanjiro will probably meet his end on Mount Natagumo fighting Rui, as he doesn't have his sister with him for assistance like he did in the anime, and there's no guarantee he will survive long enough for a Hashira to come and rescue him. Thus, the journey of our golden-hearted hero will come to an end. That'd be a shame, wouldn't it? So let's just make the story go on canonically and skip to the part where Muzan confronts Kaguya in his mansion. We all know how Kaguya one-upped Muzan by peeking into the future and played the Uno reverse card on the unsuspecting demon lord. Muzan is then impaled by flesh seeds, immobilizing him, and Tamayoro injects him with a serum that, with the help of Gyomei, has the potential to turn him back into a human. Now there can be two potential outcomes if we consider the Nakime isn't able to transport Muzan and all the Hashiras back during the onslaught. One of Tamyo's medicines act fast and turns Muzan human again quickly, all while Himejima bashes his head in again and again. That would be a disappointing outcome, as the other demons would likely die out and disperse, leaving Muzan in the hands of the Hashiras and facing a terrifying future. But that's all just wishful thinking, and we know that the Demon Lord isn't going anywhere so easily, which takes us to the second route the story could go. Muzan is impaled by the spikes and has nowhere to flee, as he is surrounded by Hashiras and gradually transformed back into a human. He would always use the technique he used against the OG breath user Yoriichi and split his body into numerous cellular parts and run away. Whatever way the story drags itself, Muzan is not going down without a fight, and he will most probably return with a fury of vengeance and end the Demon Slayer course once and for all. This is clearly not the outcome that most of the audience would hope for. But then again, we are playing by the rules of Koyoharu Gotoge, the author. That was not a very fitting end, was it? So let's discuss another theory while we're at it, going back to the roots of all these debacles. What if Muzan never killed the doctor who treated him out of spite? That could direct the story in a number of ways. Muzan, as we all know, was highly impatient with the doctor and killed him in frustration, unbeknownst to him that the blue spider lily medicine was actually working on him and treating his incurable disease. So assuming Muzan doesn't kill his doctor after his doctor makes the discovery that Muzan has turned into a human-eating monstrosity, he could very well try to escape the abomination he made. But Muzan won't allow such a thing to happen. He would make him spill all the beans about the treatment method and find a path to immortality. Or the doctor could just simply die in the process of Muzan extracting the information, which would then turn out similar to the main storyline. This hypothesis really depends on the nature of the doctor and his values. If he is a good human being, he will most likely try to save the world from the monster he created and try to kill Muzan or himself. Another outcome can be that he comes under the influence of the Demon Lord and helps him to attain the power to walk in the sun and become his partner in crime. Whatever the case may be, this will turn Demon Slayer lore on its head, ending the story even before it starts. Muzan's appearance would not result in formation of the Demon Slayer Corps. Instead, he would attempt and most likely succeed in ruling the world. That would also result in a depressing ending. But wait, we cannot forget one thing. The Ubuyashiki household might still end up putting up a resistance to the Demon King's crusade, and the story will take a 180-degree turn. We might end up in a universe where demons rule the land, and humans hide and fight in the shadows. That could make for a very interesting plot. But in any case, we know that Muzan is not dying the death he deserves, proving that in the original story, Muzan is killed in a 1 in a billion chance made by fate, acting for over 1,000 years and creating characters who contribute to his death in some ways over this long period of time, with all of it assimilating and resting in the hands of our protagonist, who battles in a fight for his life to land the final of the millions of blows delivered over centuries of fighting and complete the story that has woven together by fate, turning the story into legend. If Gyomei accompanied Rengoku on his mission to the Mugen train, Gyomei after the Hashira meeting suggests that he follow Rengoku, as the two hadn't really had any time to talk since they're too busy fighting Muzan's malfunctioning demons. He added that the area under Gyomei's protection has been slumbering cases of demon presence, so it might actually be a good thing. Both the Hashiras get on a train that is supposed to take them to the shed, where the Mugen train is being held for repair. However, like in the original story, the conductor briefs them about the new location, and the duo jumps over the tracks and heads over to the workshop that supposedly holds the Mugen train. Upon reaching there, the duo is confronted by the slasher demon, who's still as handsome and bald as in the original timeline. However, this time around, as soon as the demon's hands are cut off by Rengoku, Gyomei doesn't allow the snarling demons to escape and batters him with his spiked flail. With another threat neutralized, the duo gets on board the Mugen train the next day to investigate the 40 people who've gone missing and run into the Kamado squad, who've been assigned to assist Rengoku, considering the fact that they actually cannot do anything if it actually turns out to be an upper demon. Rengoku is quick to accept the trio and their demon accomplice. However, Gyomei is still suspicious of the children due to his past trauma. Suddenly, the back door opens and the conductor enters the compartment. The lights flicker and demons appear on the train. However, they are swiftly beheaded by the Hashiras in a pretty anticlimactic manner. The night grows darker and suddenly all the slayers as well as the passengers on the train are put into a deep trance. A few children under the influence of Enmu, the lower rank one, who actually is controlling the train, enters the compartment. But as soon as they try to tie their hands to those of Gyomei, he instantly wakes up, pushing the kids away. Everyone wakes up due to the shockwaves produced by Gyomei's panic. Subsequently, Gyomei and Rengoku get in a decisional loop, as they cannot decide what to do with the ill-intentioned children. However, Tanjiro and Zenitsu vow of their innocence, as both of them can smell and hear their intentions, which were reluctant to begin with. Suddenly, Enmu reveals that he has transformed into the train itself, as the compartment turns into a half-eaten meat sandwich, putting all the slayers into their fighting modes. Gyomei and Tanjiro rush over to the engine of the train while Rengoku and the others fight the compartment tentacles to prevent civilian casualties. This time around, Gyomei instantaneously determines that the engine is actually the head of the demon and severs it without much effort. However, as soon as the train starts falling off track, Gyomei is kicked off the train by an unknown presence who attacks through the smoke. The dust around Gyomei's crash settles. We see the strongest Hashira in a physical tussle with Akaza, the Upper Moon 3. The Kamaboko squad is absolutely horrified upon seeing Akaza, which may also be interdimensional trauma due to Rengoku getting pumped into a donut in another universe. However, this time Gyomei is here to save the day. Rengoku exits an overturned compartment, having saved all the passengers, and gives a concerned look at his comrade's position. Akaza compliments Gyomei on his strength, claiming that he'll actually turn out to be a splendid opponent after all these years. However, Gyomei gives his usual response, condemning Akaza on behalf of God. Akaza tries to end Gyomei with a kick to the gut. However, as he's about to deliver the blow, Rengoku butts in and slices Akaza's foot right off. The three of them put some distance between them as Akaza instantly regenerated his foot. Akaza is amused by the fact that he's had the 1 in a million opportunity to fight not one, but 2 Hashiras at once. This puts a smile on Akaza's basketball-shaped head, as he offers the 2 Hashiras a chance at survival, but only if they defect to Muzan's side. As usual, the Hashiras throw down the offer in an instant, depriving us of yet another fun twist. But whatever. Inosuke, like usual, tries to butt in the fight, mostly verbally, but gets instantly bitch-slapped by Akaza, who states that he hates weaklings such as himself, as the sight of him is nauseating. Tanjiro and Zenitsu hold Inosuke back as Gyomei takes out his flail and axe, spinning it above his head in his signature style. Rengoku also voices his emotions and states that an opportunity like this is amazing in itself. Both the Hashiras charge at Akaza, who soon starts getting overwhelmed by Gyomei's strength and Rengoku's tenacity. He once again regenerates his limbs cut off by the two, and prepares to unleash his blood demon art. He hits Gyomei and Rengoku with a few of his airstrikes, which almost end up reenacting Rengoku's donut status. Gyomei advises Rengoku to stay back while he engages Akaza and finds a weakness in his stance. Gyomei advances swiftly towards the demon and stomps the ground near Akaza, disbalancing him. He then subsequently hits him with his flail that he bounced off behind him, shattering almost all of his upper body and throwing him at a distance. Akaza soon recovers, but Gyomei and Rengoku confront him with a new plan. Gyomei goes in with his strength in order to create an opening, while Rengoku actively goes for Akaza's head. They combine their strikes multiple times. However, Akaza keeps dodging the attacks, but as the fight progresses, some of Rengoku's attacks start hitting near the neck, making Akaza worry about his his head. Soon Gyomei puts all his effort into the seemingly last swing of his axe in an effort to behead Akaza, which he avoids by a hair. But soon as he ducks, Rengoku flanks him and cuts him right at the neck and fails to decapitate him completely. Gyomei realizes this and with one swing of his flail, hits Rengoku's sword from the back and decapitates Akaza with the sheer force of the strike. Akaza, with his head decapitated, takes a few steps back. His head echoes with Muzan's voice, ordering him to keep fighting. But between all that vile talk, he hears a soothing voice calling him by his real name, Hakuji. Akaza, in his head, looks over at where the voice is located and finds a beautiful girl waiting for him. She asks him to stop the bloodshed and finally come join her and his sensei in the afterlife. However, all this is sidelined as Muzan once again takes control of Akaza, urging him to fight. Meanwhile, smiles appear on the faces of the Hashiras and the Kamaboko squad, but they soon turn into concerned frowns as Akaza's body starts to move instead of withering away like ash. Akaza soon regenerates his head, which almost horrifies the Slayers, and the Hashiras attack the demon once again. As soon as Akaza's head grows back, he spots the Hashiras dashing towards him, but he also realizes that the sun will rise any minute now, which will definitely kill him. Thus, instead of engaging the Hashiras in battle, he decides to run towards the forest in an attempt to live and fight another day. The Slayers suffer minimum casualties, but Gyomei and Rengoku get concerned owing to the fact that their worst nightmare has come true. Upper demon moons cannot be killed with a simple beheading, just like they imagined. But Tanjiro is concerned about something else, as the smell of Akaza's emotion turned pure for a brief period of time, and changed completely once he regenerated his head. Meanwhile, Akaza recuperated from his trauma in the forest, while the voice of Muzan in his head has seemingly grown a lot weaker for some reason. Akaza starts growing impatient due to the confusion caused by the sudden influx of memories of his human life, which makes him feel certain emotions that he didn't even know he was capable of feeling for over 200 years. Tanjiro, back at the Butterfly Mansion, recuperates from his injuries while a cat appears at the window. The cat is revealed to be a Chachamaru, the male cat of Lady Tamayo. Apparently, Tanjiro sent her a letter describing what happened with Akaza, along with the blood sample of Enmu, which has piqued her interest. She instructs Tanjiro to meet her as soon as possible, as this could be a breakthrough for them in their efforts towards killing the demon. While all this occurs, Akaza's connection with Muzan is at its weakest, as he remembers his life, the agony of his father, and the horrible fate that his master and soon-to-be wife suffered. He destroys multiple trees out of rage and trauma, while looking for a way out of the mental stress. Soon Tanjiro arrives at Tamayo's new location, assisted by Chachamaru, where he is once again humiliated by Yushiro, who is more focused on protecting Tamayo with his edgelord persona. Tamayo briefs Tanjiro about how she escaped Muzan's crutches 500 years ago, and believes that the upper three is on the same path. However, Tamayo explains that she needs to contact Akaza in order to guide him through the process of separation and gain an ally for her cause. Meanwhile, Muzan gets a whiff of Akaza's separation from his mind web and summons one of the upper demons. The upper demon Muzan summoned happens to be none other than the best friend of Akaza, Doma. Muzan tasks Doma with finding out the whereabouts of Akaza and getting rid of him if the need arises. Doma replies mockingly with fake care for his brother-in-arms, and promises Muzan that he'll do whatever it takes to find Akaza. As the conversation between Tamayo and Tanjiro continues, Tanjiro senses danger and goes straight for his sword. However, he gets hit by some unknown object, which crashes through Tamayo's ceiling. The dust settles and we see Akaza holding Tanjiro by the neck, subduing him. Yushiro covers up Tamayo and orders her to escape, but Akaza orders everyone to stop right where they are. He slowly releases Tanjiro and jumps back. Akaza bows his head down in anger and explains that he followed Tanjiro while he was traveling here and knows everything they're planning. Everyone in the room is horrified, as they inherently consider the possibility of Muzan gaining control of Akaza once again. But Akaza looks Tamayo right in the eye and utters the words, "I need your help." Apparently, Akaza has gained all of his senses back and partially broken free of Muzan's curse, but he does need Tamayo's help in order to keep Muzan permanently out of his psyche. Tamayo, with the help of Yushiro's mind control capabilities, tries to sever his connection to Muzan permanently. This feat was only achievable with Yushiro's help, and in the original series, he single-handedly severed Nakimei's connection to Muzan during the final battle. The gruesome process goes on for hours as Akaza goes through his memories of killing and devouring humans for all these years, which weighed down on his will to live a lot. However, Tanjiro encourages him to go through the pain, as he can actually be the key to ending Muzan once and for all. The process finally ends, and Akaza breaks free of Muzan's curse, permanently severing his bonds with the Demon King. As all of them celebrate the reawakening of Akaza, a cold gust of wind blows in through the window, and snow starts falling outside. A frown climbs up Akaza's face as he realizes what comes next. Akaza immediately jumps out of the house, and as soon as he lands, he gets attacked by angel-like figures made of ice. He breaks the statues with the shockwaves. However, something gets behind him during all this. As soon as Akaza turns back to face his opponent, Doma appears and stabs Akaza with one of his wind fans. Realizing that Doma has been sent here to capture him, Akaza gets anxious. However, he instantaneously severs Doma's arm, impaled in his body, and jumps back. Tamayo, Yushiro, and Tanjiro watch in horror as Yushiro once again suggests Lady Tamayo to run away and leave Tanjiro behind as bait. However, Tamayo immediately strikes down the idea, looking over the ridiculousness of the proposal, and stating that it won't be too easy to run away from the upper moon. And not to mention, there might even be some backup demons waiting to ambush them. Doma taunts Akaza once again, mentioning he's still as weak as the day they last met, in an effort to anger him. Filled with rage, Akaza moves forward and uses destructive death. However, all the shockwaves are swiftly countered by Doma's cryokinetic ice sculptures. While amidst the battle, Doma looks over at the trio standing at the second floor and with a sadistic smile on his face utters the words, "Yoriichi mo." Just kidding. Doma waves his fan in their direction in an effort to kill them. Immediately, a gust of cold wind flows past Tanjiro and the others. Tamayo and Yushiro are struck with disbelief as the attack wasn't even able to scratch them. As the trio looks down on the two upper moons laying waste to the nearby houses, suddenly a volley of ice spears rains down on them from behind. The spears impale the unsuspecting Tamayo and Yushiro, knocking them out of the house. However, as soon as one of the spears approaches Tanjiro, Nezuko erupts out of Tanjiro's wooden box and blocks it while simultaneously transforming into her adult state. Tanjiro turns around to find an ice clone of Doma standing in the room with a smile just as grim as the original demon. Meanwhile, Akaza struggles to close the distance between him and Doma as none of his attacks connect due to Doma's ice shields. Frustrated, Akaza lets out a primal scream and dashes right towards Doma in desperation, only to get impaled with an ice statue summoned by the upper two. Akaza's body starts freezing from the inside as Doma comes closer and whispers in his ears that witnessing him get assimilated into Muzan once again would be ecstatic to watch. Once again, Akaza ruminates about his past life, and an image of his master appears before him, reminding him of the importance of his name and that he has something to protect. Akaza taps into his anger and unleashes destructive death upon himself, with his legs severing his body into two parts. Doma gets caught in the attack as well, but he quickly regenerates, displaying his superior regenerative capabilities. Meanwhile, Tanjiro and Nezuko battle Doma's clone at a noticeable disadvantage. The clone unleashes yet another ice avalanche towards Tanjiro at an insane speed, much to his horror. Tanjiro's life flashes before his eyes as the cold snow approaches him. However, as the ice is about to touch his body, Nezuko pushes Tanjiro out of the way, getting both her hands cut off in the process. Much like Jax from Mortal Kombat, but a bit lighter in color, if you know what I mean. Anyway, Nezuko's blood splashes all over the place, painting the snow blood red. The clone once again swings his fan to create another snow attack, but Nezuko immediately regenerates her hands and activates her blood demon art, lighting the snow on fire with the spilled blood, filling up the room with smoke and dust. Once the dust settles, we see the clone still standing with a damaged body ready to unleash another attack. Tanjiro takes a fighting stance ready to battle the clone, but suddenly a hole opens up in the chest of the clone and it melts away. Both Tanjiro and Nezuko get confused as to what is happening, and that is when Yushiro removes a talisman from his head and reveals that he punched the clone through the chest using an invisibility talisman. Tanjiro too enters the room and explains that with everyone's help, the 5 of them can ward off Doma, as the sun will rise within an hour. Meanwhile, Akaza regenerates his lower body, but starts getting thrown around by Doma's Ice Angels, while the upper 2 nonchalantly ask him to give up, as he is going to lose sooner or later. Akaza manages to find footing, takes his Soryu-style stance, and initiates the technique development and compass needle simultaneously. Akaza reveals that he had been saving this technique to kill Kokushibo, but his good fortune has led him to use it on him. As the needle on Akaza's compass hits 6, his feet strike the ground, creating a massive crater and propelling the demon towards Doma at an unbelievable speed. Doma, with a disappointed expression on his face, summons an Ice Buddha statue and asks Akaza if he learned nothing in all these years he's lived. As soon as Akaza is about to get hit by the Buddha statue, the needle on his compass changes direction, and so does Akaza. The needle starts going haywire as Akaza starts encircling Doma at tremendous speed. Suddenly, the needle stops at 12, and Akaza emerges out of his formation behind Doma and unleashes a barrage of destructive death upon the former comrade. Doma's body bursts into smithereens, and so does the Buddha statue. Akaza gives off a grin as he just dispersed the prickliest thorn in his eyes, but as he raises his head to celebrate the victory, Doma grabs his arm from behind once again and starts freezing it, revealing that he switched with a clone at the very last second. Doma belittles Akaza, stating that he won't ever be as strong as him. Suddenly, as Doma unfurls his fans in order to continue the assault, a wave of air filled with flowers creates a blockade between him and Akaza. The attack fades and Akaza vanishes right in front of Doma's eyes. As Doma tries to process what just happened, he's swept off his feet by an unknown force and tossed onto the floor. His arms get restrained by an invisible force, and suddenly, an attack hits his neck, but he manages to stop it by freezing the area around his neck with ice harder than rock. It is revealed that Nezuko, Akaza, and Tanjiro attack Doma wearing invisibility talismans, and currently, Akaza holds Doma on the ground while Tanjiro tries to decapitate him. With only minutes left until sunrise, Doma feels the force of Akaza's hand on his and starts freezing them. Akaza orders Tanjiro to hurry it up, as he doesn't want to get toasted in the sun along with him, while Tanjiro tries his best to move the blade through the ice in Doma's neck. Fearing that an opportunity like this won't come around for another century, Yushiro gives up on his stubbornness to protect Lady Tamayo and joins in on the effort. He places his hands on Doma's head and enters his mind, but finds nothing except cold, unending darkness, reflecting the fact that Doma has no emotions to manipulate, only cold-blooded sadism. He is taken aback when he sees the sun rising behind Akaza and runs to find shade. Akaza declares that dying might be worth it if he's able to drag Doma to hell with him as well. As the sun's rays slowly race towards Akaza, Tanjiro exerts all his strength into a final push and starts cracking the ice on Doma's neck. Akaza spots this and encourages Tanjiro to finish it. However, Tanjiro takes a look at the sun behind Akaza and realizes that they won't make it. But suddenly, Akaza is kicked into the shade by Nezuko as she takes on the full force of the sunlight. Doma tries to move out of the way, but the sun's rays act quickly and turn his body to ash in a matter of seconds, killing the upper 2 for good. Tanjiro rushes towards Nezuko, whose skin starts burning due to the sun's rays. In a desperate attempt, he runs for his wooden box, but hears a very familiar voice for the first time in years. He turns around, and for the first time in years, there stands an unmuzzled Nezuko with healed-up wounds. Tanjiro runs towards her and folds her up in his arms, with tears flowing out of his eyes. He thanks God for their mercy, and so does Nezuko, repeating everything her brother says, like a baby. Akaza, Yushiro, and Tamayo aren't able to believe their eyes as they lay their sights on the strongest being in the entire world, Nezuko Kamado. This news reaches the headquarters where Kagaya is informed of everything by the Kasugai crows. He's ecstatic. However, fearing a worse fate waiting to befall the Kamado siblings, he immediately calls for a Hashira meeting, sending out crows to everyone. Akaza, Tanjiro, and Nezuko are seen traveling towards the location as Oyakata-sama has extended a friendly hand towards the former Upper Moon demon and wants to meet him in person. Along the way, Nezuko is relearning how to speak with Tanjiro, and upon seeing this sight, Akaza is reminded of his own family and how his father chose death over medicines, which were a product of his thievery. But more so than his family, Akaza looked towards the sky, longing for another person. A part of him could never become one with him. that person was his promised bride, Koyuki. Nezuko looks over at the gloomy Akaza and strides towards him with her tiny little steps. As she reaches him, she hands Akaza a tiny wild flower, stating that flowers make people happy, so smile. As soon as Nezuko hands the flower over, a number of fireworks are shot off in the moonless sky, filling it up with colors. Akaza promises Koyuki through the fireworks that he'll repent for what he did and set things straight. Meanwhile, at the Infinity Castle, all the demons are summoned. As the 4 upper demons arrive, they wonder if an upper moon got killed by the Demon Slayer Corps. Muzan enters the Infinity Castle, and announces that the wait is finally over, and that a demon who is resistant to the sun has taken form on this earth. As soon as Muzan finishes talking, all the lights in the Infinity Castle flicker, and the temperature drops, as a cold wind blows midst the upper moon, marking the entrance of someone sinister. What would happen if Yoriichi was Nezuko's brother? As you guys know, Yoriichi never had a kind and caring sister. What he had was an older sister, one with a ridiculous, almost overwhelming inferiority complex. See what I'm trying to say? If only Michikatsu had realized that there is no need for him to overcome his brother. If only. Now how about we go back to that time over 4 centuries ago when these 2 brothers were born. And just a year later, they're blessed with a younger sister, Nezuko Sugikuni. Why don't you ever talk to Yoriichi, brother? She asks. Come on, Nezuko. Both of us know our brother is deaf. He can't talk. Michikatsu replies. Huh? I wonder if that's true. At this time, Nezuko was only 6 years old, but she was doubtful about the idea that Yoriichi is deaf. Back then, Michikatsu thought that he'll always have to protect the 2 of them since he is the big brother. But things changed when the very same day Yoriichi spoke for the first time. Yoriichi spelled out that his dream is to become the second strongest, so that he can be right alongside his brother. And he later proved his extraordinary prowess against their tutor. Michikatsu was conflicted. At this time, he thought Yoriichi was the pitiful one. He thought he'll always have to look after Yoriichi and Nezuko, but on the very first day Yoriichi picked up the sword, he was already the strongest swordsman around. The envy, the hate, the feelings of insecurity, all these thoughts invade his head. Nobody else realized it, but Yoriichi and Nezuko could tell that something was bothering their brother, and Yoriichi was the reason, but just not sure what to say to him. Then one day Nezuko, who was picking some herbs, was late. Being late itself wasn't anything to be concerned about, but Yoriichi had a bad feeling about it. So just when the sun sets, he runs toward the forest. Michikatsu notices him and tags along. There at the forest, they find Nezuko surrounded by almost a dozen demons, all of them hiding, waiting for the sun to set. But now the sun was no longer in the picture. They were ready to feast on this little girl. Fortunately, thanks to Yoriichi's foresight, both him and Michikatsu arrive before it's too late. But now what? Yoriichi may be a better swordsman than all the adults, but he is still just a child. He still hasn't learned or developed his breathing. And for what it's worth, this is the first time any of them have seen a demon. No problem. Yoriichi straight up blitzes the one who jumps at Nezuko. For some reason, Michikatsu also wasn't afraid of the demons at all. To him, the real display of dominance was what Yoriichi did just now. Within a split second, he ended the life of something that wasn't even human. Or did he? Yoriichi had switched his attention to all the other demons. That's why he was unaware that the one he just cut had already regenerated. The regenerated demon was inches away from Nezuko, while Yoriichi was slicing up all the other demons. This is where Michikatsu's ability to silently observe comes in a clutch. He stomps the regenerated demon and tells Nezuko to get behind him. This catches Yoriichi's attention. He grins. Now that there is no need to worry about Nezuko's safety, he can go all out. Through trial and error, he learns that if you slice their head, they will no longer regenerate. And just like that, Yoriichi proceeds to cut all of them. Well then, back to our story. On their way back, Michikatsu is having thoughts of inferiority. In his mind, he wasn't of any help, but both Yoriichi and Nezuko smile and appreciate their gratitude. Yes, it's Yoriichi who killed them all, but it's only thanks to Michikatsu that no one was hurt. In the wake of this, for the first time since Michikatsu was born, he answers his sibling's smile with a smile of his own. Both Yoriichi and Michikatsu are now 10. One of them has to go and be the priest, and since their father acknowledges Yoriichi's extraordinary skills, it has to be Michikatsu who will be the priest. Michikatsu had more or less accepted his fate. He will never be able to match up to his brother, but on that night, Yoriichi tells him that he'll be the one who will go to be the priest. Michikatsu can't understand why he'd do that, but Yoriichi reassures him that it's only because he wants to leave the place and see the world, but he'd be uneasy if there is no one who can protect Nezuko. Seeing how carefree Yoriichi was about the entire thing makes Michikatsu laugh a little. It's like he's the only one stressing over everything. Sure enough, Yoriichi leaves, but he's still on good terms with his brother. On his journey, he meets the young lady named Uta. The two of them bond together really well, and they get married 10 years later. Meanwhile, Michikatsu and Nezuko also get married. Michikatsu already has a child, in fact. As for Nezuko, she always thought it'd be great if she could meet a man who is like a Hisha. Her dream came true when she met Agatsuma Zenin. He was her ideal man. When they receive a letter from Yoriichi telling them about how his child will be born soon, they decide to pay their brother a visit. Soon the day arrives when Yoriichi leaves his home to go and find a midwife who can help with the pregnancy. He promised her that he'd be back before sunset, but on the way, he couldn't ignore this old man who desperately required help. His son was on the verge of death, and he had to travel over 3 mountains all by himself. Yoriichi helped him get to his son in a matter of hours, though by this time, the sun had already set. He ditches trying to find a midwife for the time being and quickly rushes back home. Remember guys, this Yoriichi is already familiar with demons. Once he's back home, he experiences a stench of blood and hastily opens the door. There's a corpse lying on the ground. It's a demon's corpse. His brother Michikatsu and Nezuko are also there, and his wife is sleeping peacefully. Seeing this, Yoriichi drops down on the ground. He experiences such an overwhelming sense of relief that he was at a complete loss for words. Nezuko reaches out to him with her hand and helps him get up. It was all okay. His wife and unborn child were completely fine. "Brother, Nezuko, thank you," Yoriichi states, as tears come running down his cheeks. In the days that follow, Nezuko helps with the pregnancy. Yoriichi's child is born. It's a girl. The three of them, Yoriichi, Uta, and Nezuko, think hard and deep about the name, but when Michikatsu returns after hunting some food, he quickly ends the discussion by suggesting the name Yoko, a name that roughly means child of the sun. Indeed, Yoriichi's daughter is named Yoko Sugikuni. About 10 days after Michikatsu and Nezuko saved his wife from a demon slayer who was following that demon shows up at the place. He introduces himself and the Demon Slayer organization. Both Yoriichi and Michikatsu decide to join. When Nezuko returns to her home and tells her husband about it, he takes the plunge as well. Yoriichi soon realizes his son breathing, and thanks to his tutelage, all of the other Demon Slayers awaken their marks, and also learn their own styles of breathing: flame, wind, water, thunder, rock, and many more. The one who learned the thunder breathing is Nezuko's husband, Agatsuma Zenin. Michikatsu also awakened the mark and learned the moon breathing. He started having those feelings of inferiority again, but the next time he meets Nezuko and mentions his moon breathing, she's pleased. "Brother Yoriichi has the sun breathing, and you have the moon breathing. Isn't it amazing? It's like you two were born to support each other. You are the moon to his sun," Nezuko affirms. Her words strike a deep chord with Michikatsu. Yes, he has always felt insecure. Yes, he has always felt envious of Yoriichi, but it doesn't have to be that way. He was never born to be Yoriichi Sugikuni. No, he was born to be Michikatsu Sugikuni, a notable samurai, the defender of the weak, and the moon pillar that supports his brother. Michikatsu's convictions are reborn. From this moment forward, all he has to do is continue walking the path of a samurai like he has always had. That's it, and that's everything. Even after realizing the demon slayer who awakened the mark will die before the age of 25, Michikatsu's newfound conviction remained unnerved. Even after he met Kibitsuji Muzan and offered him a chance to live forever as a demon, he simply laughed and braced himself to face the king of all demons. The way I see it, Michikatsu, or should I say Kokushibo, is an anomaly among demons. Unlike Akaza or Doma, he had a completely normal life. He was also given a choice. A choice to live on as Kokushibo or to die as Michikatsu Sugikuni. This one chooses the latter. If he is destined to be number 2, then he'd rather die as the moon to his brother than be subordinate to the Demon King. Just like that, Michikatsu Sugikuni dies like a noble samurai at age 24. His name will be forever remembered throughout history as the only known user of moon breathing. As fate would have it, Yoriichi crosses paths with Muzan before he learns of his brother's demise. Be that as it may, the moment we saw Muzan, Yoriichi knew. He understood that he was born into this world to defeat this man. Now, since Muzan was unable to turn Michikatsu into a demon, he was still interested in warriors who can use breaths. He still wanted to turn one of them into a demon. That's why he invites Yoriichi to ditch everything and become a demon. Naturally, Yoriichi declined, as naturally he breathed. This prompted Muzan to grin. He ended up mentioning that the last breathing user he encountered also declined his invitation. He must not be popular. But when Muzan recalls how the last one was a user of moon breathing, Yoriichi's blood instinctively boils. There was no time to mourn. Muzan experiences Yoriichi's raging bloodlust at face value, and for the first time in his life, he experiences absolute, overwhelming fear. Before Yoriichi even pulls out his sword, Muzan knew that he was going to die. He knew that there is no other way the story ends, so he tries to flee. But Yoriichi, who could see his 7 hearts and 5 brains, performed all 12 forms of the sun breathing in coherence, and perfected the 13th form, the one that is designed to get rid of Muzan's 12 vital organs. Once he perfects it, it only takes him a mere instance to pierce Muzan's 7 hearts and 5 brains. Yoriichi wanted to ask him what he thinks of human lives, but there was no need. He already had a bad taste in his mouth due to hearing about his brother's death. Without thinking, Yoriichi finishes off the King of the Demons right then and there. From start to finish, the battle only lasted a couple of minutes. Now, it's over. Yoriichi has successfully put an end to over 500 years worth of tragedies. Tamayo is also completely freed of Muzan's control. She breaks down into tears and thanks Yoriichi with all her heart. No need. After all, I was born in this world for the purpose of killing Muzan. Yoriichi tells her and leaves. He also spares her life. When he returns to the pillars, all of them officially inform him of his brother's death. But of course, he already knew. He then mentions that Kibutsuji Muzan no longer lives. These words take over the entire scene. Everyone is dead silent. It almost feels like a dream. But they know that if anyone could have killed the King of Demons, it's Yoriichi Sugikuni. Everyone rejoices. Yoriichi then goes with Agatsuma Zenin to visit Nezuko and personally informs her of their brother's death. It's a bittersweet moment, but they feel solace in the fact that their brother can rest in peace now that Muzan is dead. In the years that follow, Yoriichi watches over his daughter. She has grown to be a resilient and strong woman, and Yoriichi also meets Sumiyoshi, a member of the Kamado family. He shows them the beautiful Hinokami Kagura dance and lives the rest of his life in peace. At the age of 80, the man dies of old age. He had no regrets. He died with a gentle smile on his face. The Hinokami Kagura dance was inherited by his daughter and the Kamado family. Then over 4 centuries later, Tanjiro is born in the Kamado family, and a year later his sister is also born. Due to her uncanny resemblance to Nezuko Sugikuni from the Sengoku era, she is named after her. Kamado Nezuko it is. And of course the world is now free of demons. What if Yoriichi fought Zoro? Now, Zoro and the others arrived in Wano a couple of weeks before Luffy and his group. They were to stay low for the time and not attract the attention of Orochi or the Beast Pirates. Kinemon stressed the importance of staying low time and time again, but they all were still looking at Zoro. He's going to get lost, isn't he? These were everyone's thoughts. Zoro-dono, the reason I'm telling everyone to stay low isn't just because of Orochi or the Beast Pirates. Rumors are that strange phenomena occurred in Wano all the time. Some people just disappear and are never found again. Kinemon once again asks Zoro to not go off on his own, but the thing about people disappearing isn't a lie. Of course, Kinemon himself doesn't know much about it. Heck, even Kaido or Orochi don't know. So what's the reason behind these mysterious disappearances? Well, long before the current events, even before the events of the Void Century, this mystery dates back to the very beginning of the One Piece world. Before Lady Toki, there were plenty of users who ate the Time fruit, but only one of them was able to awaken its ability. The name of that individual is unknown, but if anyone is to guess, he most likely came from the moon, and he was the first one to eat the Time fruit. There are various things in the One Piece world that can't be explained. The mysterious disappearances are presumed to be one of them, but look far enough and there is an explanation for everything. When the Time fruit awakened, it left behind this strange residue whose side effects can still be felt even thousands of years. These side effects are what have caused all those disappearances. The people don't actually disappear from existence though, they're just redirected to a different timeline, and in some cases, even an alternate reality. After all, the desire of all things is born into this world. As Zoro was walking around Ringo, the land that has always been ruled by the Shimotsuki clan, he experiences an unusual scent in the air. Zoro just couldn't help it. He is Zoro after all, and it's not like he's going to get lost just because he followed a light scent, right? Unfortunately, this is exactly what happens. The thing is, the number of people who disappear is astonishingly low. That's why no one ever really raised any concerns about it. It's like one person every 10 years or so, and very rarely do they return. Rumor has it that the legendary god of the blade, Shimotsuki Ryuma, once experienced this mysterious phenomenon as well. Meanwhile, in a different world, the greatest demon slayer to ever exist is taking a light stroll. A few months ago, he finally killed the king of demons. Since then, the world has been freed of the curse of demons. One day, as Yoriichi is traveling around in the northmost regions of Japan, he meets an old storyteller. Yoriichi may not seem like it, but he loves stories, tales from the past, legends of the old. He helps out the old storyteller with his chores for the entire week, and then asks the man to tell him something interesting. "Young man, I can tell. You're strong. You almost remind me of the samurai my great-grandfather used to talk about before he passed. The samurai named Shimotsuki Ryuma." the old man states. Yoriichi is all ears. The old man goes on to talk about Ryuma, how he once appeared out of nowhere and saved him from a demon who could transform into a dragon. He didn't have a Nichiren sword, but the samurai possessed something else, an unexplainable power that made the dragon submit to him. Yoriichi is impressed. He asks if that samurai ever tried to go after Muzan. The old man explains that no, he just disappeared a few days later, or at least that's what his great-grandfather said. Must have been a ghost. Yoriichi leaves the old storyteller's place quite pleased with himself. He can't wait to return home and share the story with his wife Uta and his daughter Yoko. The story of Ryuma, the samurai ghost who slayed a demonic dragon. He also wants to share it with Sumihiko's family the next time he shows them his Hinokami Kagura dance. Now Yoriichi is giggling on his way back when suddenly a sinister mist starts surrounding the area. It would have been hard to see for a normal person, but thanks to Yoriichi's see-through vision, he makes out a swordsman heading his way. Soon the mist fades away, and you guessed it, guys, the swordsman is Roronoa Zoro. He followed the scent and somehow ended up all here in an alternate reality. I can't believe I got lost, Zoro says. Yoriichi silently stares at him. He was going to ask him if he's Shimotsuki Ryuma. Something about the 3 swords Zoro was carrying caused him to be cautious instead. He is concerned. Who is this? A human? A demon? There was definitely something unusual about Zoro. He was giving off a strong, ominous, yet powerful strength. Yes, Yoriichi ended demonhood after killing Muzan, but now that he has come across this man, he wonders, is there more to demonhood than just Muzan? There was also the demonic dragon the old storyteller talked about. Soon the mist fades away, and the 2 of them are seen standing underneath the moon's pale glow. The battlefield lay bare. There is an open plain surrounded by dense forest. The air hung with anticipation as the 2 swordsmen were now facing each other. Yoriichi was still conflicted. He has never met anyone like Zoro. He can't quite understand if this is going to be a battle or not. Can you tell me where I am? This is still Wano, right? Zoro asks. Wano? I've never heard of that place before. But by any chance, could you be Shimotsuki Ryuma? Yoriichi asks back. Zoro is taken aback by hearing Ryuma's name. But this is good. If this other swordsman knows about Ryuma, that means he's still in Wano. Of course, Zoro is still too thick-skinned to realize that someone confusing him for Ryuma means bad news. After all, Ryuma has been dead for centuries. It takes him a couple of seconds before he more or less realizes what's going on. This is the past, isn't it? Zoro sighs. No, Zoro. You got lost and ended up in a different world altogether. Still, Zoro could tell that Yoriichi is strong. That's why right then at that very moment, with his 3rd sword held in his mouth and a hardened look in his eye, Zoro braced himself. Not every day you get to fight a swordsman from the past. This should be fun, he says while squaring off his stance. Across from him, Yoriichi remained silent, his eyes as calm as still water. His breaths were slow, steady, and carrying a serene yet deadly aura. He holds the black Nichiren blade with grace. Never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined that I would face a monster on par with that man, Muzan. Yoriichi pauses for a moment and continues, No, I can feel it. You're stronger and more dangerous than Muzan. Zoro grins. The clash begins with a sudden burst of speed from Zoro. He didn't waste any time in using his signature 3-sword style move, Onigiri. Zoro's sword forms an X as he slashes through Yoriichi in a fierce motion. But Yoriichi didn't consider speed of this level to be a danger to him. Not at all. Just as Zoro attacks descend upon him, Yoriichi's blade whirls in an arc of flame and collides with Zoro's 3 swords. Sparks fly and illuminate the darkness around them. Despite the intensity of Zoro's strike, Yoriichi remained immovable. It was Onigiri versus the dance of the fire god. Zoro, on the other hand, skids back. He did not expect a counter like that. Besides, when has Onigiri ever worked against a truly worthy foe? You're not bad, Zoro says. His swords vibrate in his strong grip as he grins. Yoriichi simply nods. Now that he has experienced a clash from this man firsthand, he can go on the offensive. He steps forth and simultaneously ignites the second form of the sun-breathing, clear blue sky. What Zoro experiences next is a flurry of strikes so swift and precise, they seem to draw a clear sky on the dark canvas of the night. It is poetic to say the least. In response to this, Zoro quickly switches to his 2-sword style and fends off against Yoriichi's attacks. But Yoriichi's technique was a symphony of lethal precision. Each strike tested Zoro's finesse. Zoro laughs hysterically. How long has it been since he fought a proper swordsman? He feels so satisfied, larger than life. But Zoro, who craves the thrill of a good battle and always seeks to prove himself, at that moment, he wanted nothing more than for this night to never end. Hours pass by as their swords continue to clash. But at this point, Yoriichi has started having fun too. Now that he has exchanged so many blows with Zoro, he can tell that the unusual vibe he got from Zoro wasn't malicious at all. They were intensely fueled by his one burning desire to fight. The desire to prove himself. Yoriichi was able to butcher Muzan as naturally as he breathed, so to him, this duel with Zoro is the most fun he's ever had as a swordsman. Nobody in the Demon Slayerverse thought they'd see Yoriichi smile in the middle of a battle, but it has finally happened. Both Zoro and Yoriichi are having fun, but then Zoro notices that same scent. I see. So it's like that, huh? Zoro mutters. His time is running out. He'll soon be right back in Ringo. And so in a burst of resolve, he launches his ultimate move yet. 9-sword style, Ashura. Just like that, 9 phantom swords flash. His attack power and speed are multiplied. In the wake of this, a fire ignites within Yoriichi. He thought that the 13th form of the sun breathing was only for the purpose of killing Muzan's 7 hearts and 5 brains. But he can now use it again, this time against Zoro's 9 swords. The battle reaches its zenith as Yoriichi performs all 12 forms of the sun breathing in succession and brings out the legendary 13th form. Zoro's 9 blades clash against Yoriichi's 13 flames. For an outsider, this may have looked like hell, but to them, it was a poetic symphony, a scene from a dream, a deadly dance under the moon. The entire forest echoes as a result of this ferocious clash. When the dust finally settles, the two warriors are still standing and heaving heavily. Their respect for each other can't be explained with words. Looks like it's time. I'll soon be back to where I came from. Zoro continues. Oh great samurai, tell me your name. It's Yoriichi Sugikuni. And what about you? Yoriichi asks. Zoro. Roronoa Zoro. Zoro disappears the very instant he stated his name. He returned right back to that open field in Ringo. When Yoriichi returned, he shared the entire story with his wife and daughter, and also with Sumihiko's family. First the tale of Shimotsuki Ryuma, and then the battle he had with Roronoa Zoro. He is convinced that even though Ryuma and Zoro may not be the same person, they definitely came from the same place. Subsequently, Zoro realizes that it has somehow been more than a week since he disappeared. Kinemon is furious. The Straw Hats may be used to Zoro wandering off or wherever he wants, but he was worried restless. When Zoro returns, he quickly asks the man, "Where have you been?" To that Zoro replies, "Guess I got lost." What if Yoriichi was transported to the Taisho era in all its glory? Yoriichi strides along with his stoic nature in the thick forest, donning a deep regret in his eyes, having met the Kamados for the very last time, and holding their daughter in his arms, had tapped into his memories and made him long for a normal life with his wife Uta and their unborn child. But as Yoriichi goes on, the weather suddenly turns turbulent. Looking up in the sky, Yoriichi notices a yellow cat, which waves at him and asks him, "Just kidding." He notices a circular thundercloud and assumes that the gods aren't happy. Giving no more thought to them, he takes a few more steps. But as soon as he exits the forest, a red bolt of lightning strikes him from out of nowhere and knocks him unconscious. Yoriichi wakes up and realizes that he was unconscious throughout the day and had only regained consciousness in the night. He looks around and a spine-chilling thought crawls up his psyche as he concludes that he was carried over to a new place by someone while he was knocked out. Suddenly he overhears the deafening sound of trees falling nearby and wastes no time. He unsheaths his sword and rushes to the location. As soon as he arrives, he spots a wounded Sumiyoshi crawling on the ground, cornered by a white demon. With no hesitation, Yoriichi dashes towards the demon and cuts him into 1,000 pieces within the blink of an eye. He whips his sword and cleans the demon's blood and sheaths it while turning to see if Sumiyoshi is okay. However, as soon as he glances at his old friend's face, he's shocked. He realizes that the person he just saved was not Sumiyoshi, but rather a lookalike. That lookalike turns out to be none other than Tanjiro, the descendant of Sumiyoshi himself. Tanjiro rushes to untangle Nezuko and covers her up in order to protect her from the unknown man. Yoriichi once again grips his sword, but briefly spotting Tanjiro's Hanafuda earrings and the Demon Slayer uniform. Realizing that he's a member of the Corps, he questions Tanjiro about his connection with the demon. However, before Tanjiro could answer, Giyu arrived, jumping in between them and raising his sword towards Yoriichi. He asks, "Why the heck do you look more depressed than me?" "Oh no, that ain't right." He asks Yoriichi about his identity and why he's on the mountain against the wishes of Master Ubuyashiki. Yoriichi is startled to hear the name Ubuyashiki. However, he chooses to remain silent. This prompts Giyu to attack and subdue the rogue slayer. But as soon as Giyu moves forward, Yoriichi partially vanishes from Giyu's sight and hits him with the hilt of his sword, knocking him to the ground. His body loses its strength in an instant, and as he once again tries to get up from the ground to face his opponent, Yoriichi lauds him for his perseverance and knocks him out with a second blow. As he starts moving towards Tanjiro once again, he senses a small projectile coming for him from the back and dodges it without much effort. As he turns to determine the source of the knife, he spots the shadow of another swordsman up on the tree. The swordsman is revealed to be none other than Shinobu herself, and as soon as she jumps down to confront Yoriichi, he strikes her down in midair and slams her onto the floor like my Mitsuri body pillow. Oh, I gotta stop leaking my personal life details here. Anyways, as both the Hashiras get up and dash towards Yoriichi to attack him simultaneously, a Kasugai crow announces that all the survivors of Mount Natakumo have been summoned by the Oyakata-sama. Hearing this, everyone stops immediately and sheaths their swords as they follow the crow back to the base in utter silence. Yoriichi realizes the situation he's been thrown into, and as he reaches the headquarters, he bows before Kagaya as soon as he appears. The other Hashiras get confused. However, Yoriichi's aura makes them steer clear of him. Nonetheless, Obanai raises the question of Yoriichi's presence, and the other Hashiras chime in as well. Kagaya instructs everyone to stop and asks Yoriichi to rise. Kagaya greets him with a familiar tone and welcomes him to the future. Everyone is shocked upon hearing this. Yoriichi asks Kagaya the reason behind his familiarity, and he explains that he envisioned him through his foresight. However, he is still an anomaly in this world, and he cannot further predict what would happen to him. Kagaya introduces Yoriichi to the Hashiras as the man who developed the breathing techniques, and the first Slayer to ever encounter Muzan. Everyone is flabbergasted, but Sanemi drives everyone's attention towards Tanjiro and Nezuko. Kagaya, however, deems that the situation has already been taken care of, as Urokodaki, Giyu, and Tanjiro have taken responsibility for Tanjiro's demon accomplice. Sanemi tries to reignite the argument. However, Yoriichi swiftly replies that he can see through his aggression, which clouds his warm heart, and that he should spread those feelings of warmth towards his juniors too, by keeping his faith in them. Kagaya declares that whatever the future may hold, the appearance of the progenitor of Bretts is sure to turn the tide in their favor. Tanjiro is dismissed, and in a more personal meeting, Yoriichi iterates his story of meeting Muzan and the secret of the Bretts and the Demon Slayer marks to the other Hashiras. However, he doesn't plan to sit idle and requests submission from Kagaya. Rengoku butts in and wholeheartedly offers the inspection of the Mugen train incident, which happens to be under his jurisdiction. Kagaya approves the mission, but he insists Yoriichi to take a few lower-ranked slayers with them, one of whom he knows. A few days pass and the Kamaboko squad recovers. They are sent to their next mission, and much to their surprise, they meet up with Yoriichi himself. Stunned by the advancement in technology, Yoriichi strolls around in the railway station, along with Tanjiro and Inosuke, as the duo acts completely aloof. However, as soon as the train arrives, Yoriichi refuses to board it, claiming that the train is void of any demon presence. Suddenly, Yoriichi rushes out of the door of the station in a jiffy, leaving the three behind in confusion. Tanjiro traces Yoriichi through his smell and finds him outside confronting the slasher demon. Apparently, he had seen him through the forest and found him lurking around in search of prey. The demon takes a glance of Yoriichi and freezes in fear as the cells in his body start going nuts due to seeing Yoriichi. Yoriichi goes towards his sword, and before the demon could even say a word, Yoriichi dashes like a god, covered in the aura of the sun, decapitates him. The demon shrieks loudly due to the burn sustained in his neck after the decapitation, but the feelings soon turn to regret as the demon drifts into the afterlife. The Kamaboko squad once again insists on boarding the train, assuring Yoriichi that it's just a modern transport vehicle. He clarifies that the train doesn't frighten him, rather the train wasn't the target they were after, as he already asked the conductor about the location of the Mugen train. However, he has a feeling that after slaying this demon, Muzan would react in a very unpredictable manner, as he'd do anything to steer clear of his way. Yoriichi's bad omen comes true as suddenly a large boulder lands near the fore, and they avoid it by a hair by jumping away. The Kamaboko squad gets scattered, and even before the slasher demon fully turned to ash, Akaza appears out of the dust to correct the mistake Muzan made 500 years ago. He immediately attacks Tanjiro. However, Zenitsu uses the first form of thunder breathing and carries him away from Akaza. Akaza immediately shifts his attention towards Yoriichi. However, Akaza senses something off about the swordsman as he takes a fighting stance. Muzan's cells once again start going into panic once they get a glimpse of Yoriichi through Akaza's eyes. He asks Yoriichi if he's a Hashira. However, Yoriichi simply replies that he can find out for himself as he grips his katana. Akaza initiates technique development, and as he progresses to the compass needle, he is confused as Yoriichi oozes strength, yet the compass needle cannot detect a speck of battle spirit from the swordsman. Akaza moves forward to attack Yoriichi, nonetheless, as he's been ordered by Muzan to end both the red-haired swordsmen. Yoriichi closes the distance as well, but before Akaza could land a single blow, Yoriichi cuts off his arm. Akaza tries to regenerate his arm, but the burns on his wound due to the red sword regress his healing. Panic sets into Akaza's mind, and in an effort to back off, he plants his feet on the ground and propels backwards. Yoriichi spots the haste in Akaza's movement, and before he could move too far from him, he takes in a deep breath, and with tremendous speed, cuts off both his legs as well. Akaza tries to crawl away in desperation and exclaims, "What in the Saw movie series is this shit? I didn't sign up for this!" Just kidding. Akaza once again tries his best to regenerate his arms, and after putting all his strength in his legs with much effort, he's able to regenerate his legs. However, as soon as he plants his feet to get up on his leg, Yoriichi swiftly crosses over to his front and stares into his soul like a god of destruction. Even before a single thought of survival could cross Akaza's mind, Yoriichi lops off his head. Tanjiro and the others watch in silence as Yoriichi displays his superior skills and almost toys around with Akaza, the Upper Moon 3, while showing no signs of hatred or exertion. Akaza's cut-off head rolls towards Tanjiro, Noticing the warmth in the boy's eyes, he reminded of a figure from his past, his master. Akaza's head starts to disintegrate. However, Inosuke yells and warns Yoriichi to look behind him. Heeding the warning, Yoriichi turns behind and spots a headless Akaza, taking the stance to unleash destructive death. With concern over encountering the first demon ever after Muzan, who doesn't die after a beheading, Yoriichi immediately combines all the forms of his breathing, and even before Akaza could unleash a single blow, he cuts his body into a million pieces, ending the enigma once and for all. Yoriichi sheaths his sword and rushes towards the Kamaboko squad to see if they're hurt. As Yoriichi helps Tanjiro up, Rengoku arrives at the spot following Shintaro, only to be humbled by learning what has occurred. Meanwhile, all of the demons are summoned to the Infinity Castle, where they witness a sight never seen before. The frown on Muzan's face was enough to send Kokushibo into a state of panic and confuse the other upper moons. Soon Muzan, with a stuttering voice and veins popping out of his head, announces that the Scarlet Swordsman he encountered centuries ago has reappeared, and that he cannot return to the surface until that threat is dealt with. Kokushibo rushes forward in a jiffy and unsheaths his voracious sword. He declares that destiny has provided him with an opportunity he thought impossible. He promises Muzan the head of his brother and instantly leaves the Infinity Castle. The other demons, shocked by Kokushibo's revelation, look towards Muzan. However, tired of explaining and reliving the horrifying memories, Muzan stares at the other demons, and through his cells in them, makes them go through the same hopelessness he once felt against Yoriichi. All the demons' stomachs begin to hurl, and they get terrified, to such an extent that even the cold-blooded Doma displays traces of fear within his colorful eyes. The lights in the Infinity Castle shut down, as Muzan withdraws into one of its crevices, and Nakime transports everyone back. Doma in his mansion is ecstatic, as for the first time in 2 centuries, he's felt a tiny shred of emotion. He vows to find and battle Yoriichi before Kokushibo can lay his hands on him. Thus he sets a foolish yet clever plan into action. Doma travels to a nearby town and starts slaughtering people right before everyone's eyes, against the wishes of Muzan, using a makeshift ice sword. His plan works as a demon slayer spots him and dashes down to kill him. Doma plays with the slayer for a while. However, as soon as the sun nears the horizon, he cuts down both arms of the demon slayer and escapes, taunting him to bring in the scarlet blade for him to devour. The message successfully reaches the headquarters through the Kasugai crows, and the situation is interpreted as an act of aggression against Yoriichi by Kagaya. Kagaya summons Yoriichi and informs him about the incident. Yoriichi, with a concerned look on his face and the partial information from the Slayer that encountered the demon, derives that the demon is none other than Zoro, the king of hell himself. Bad joke, I know. Anyway, Yoriichi concludes that the demon who uses a sword could only be his brother, Michikatsu, who defected from the demon slayers 500 years ago and killed the then leader. Kagaya, with his saintly demeanor, promises Yoriichi that he wouldn't have to face the challenge himself, as it's definitely a trap, and that the other Hashira could work their way around it. However, Yoriichi gets on his feet and declares that he'll face the challenge himself, claiming that he has something that is sure to draw out Muzan and end his murderous crusade. However, Yoriichi seeks permission to take Tanjiro with him, as he has grown insanely stronger under his guidance, and has become the second known user of the Sun Breath in history. After several days of travel, Yoriichi and Tanjiro reach the designated village, only to find it completely abandoned and frozen in ice. Suddenly, freezing winds cover the landscape, and Doma appears from within a house. Tanjiro and Yoriichi clench their swords, unsheathing them. However, Doma immediately conjures up a clone and sets it after Tanjiro so that he can face Yoriichi alone. Tanjiro is taken aback. However, Yoriichi pays no attention to it and states that the demon has dug his own grave by showing up after so long. Yoriichi stares right into Doma's eyes and asks if Muzan's listening. He proclaims that he has the blue spider lily he's been looking for all these years and flaunts it right before his eyes. Doma gets confused, but before he could realize what has happened, Yoriichi dashes towards the front and beheads Doma in mere seconds. As soon as Doma's head falls onto the floor, in a wild turn of events, Kokushibo is revealed to have been standing right behind him, barely managing to dodge the attack Yoriichi set off. The ice clone fighting Tanjiro withers away, and Yoriichi commands him to stand out of the bout. Kokushibo unsheaths his flesh-ridden katana as it branches off like a tree sprouting multiple blades. The upper demon declares that he's grown exceptionally stronger these last few centuries, and that he's going to prove it by burying him right now. Yoriichi too unsheaths his sword and utters the words, "Brother, you might have gotten strong all these years, but I must end the abomination you've become. It's my sole duty." Yoriichi roars, "Here I come." And within the blink of an eye, both swordsmen clash swords in the traditional samurai fashion. Yoriichi drives past Kokushibo's sword and hits the demon with a double slash, inflicting a cross wound on his chest. The wound starts to burn as Kokushibo's body tries to heal, yet the scar refuses to close due to the burn received from Yoriichi's scarlet blade. Yoriichi turns back and with a serious look on his face asks his brother, "Is this all? Is this the extent of the strength you've accumulated by consuming innocent souls?" Kokushibo, frustrated by Yoriichi's unending potential and ailing from the battle wounds, turns into his aggravated state and vows to kill Yoriichi. Kokushibo unleashes numerous slashes using his moon breath, which hit the surrounding houses, tearing them into shreds. Tanjiro struggles to avoid the slashes but manages to outmaneuver them somehow. Kokushibo, angered to his limit, spots Tanjiro struggling and decides to finish off the brat first. Yoriichi realizes Kokushibo's intentions, and even before he could turn to face Tanjiro, he dashes towards him. Kokushibo tenses up all his muscles, which confuses Yoriichi. Yoriichi swings his sword with the usual flair. However, for the first time in the history of mankind, Kokushibo accomplishes the feat of avoiding Yoriichi's sword. Kokushibo takes a few steps back and clenches his sword tightly. Suddenly, the branches of his sword burst out in a frenzy and directly head towards Yoriichi. Yoriichi manages to avoid all of the blows. However, as he deflects them all, Kokushibo bursts into a maniacal laughter. A frown climbs up Yoriichi's face as he notices that one of the blades he avoided directly hit Tanjiro. Yoriichi calms down his nerves and, gathering all his strength, swings his blade towards Kokushibo. He cuts Kokushibo's torso off of his body as he hits the ground. Yoriichi turns to look for Tanjiro, but his jaw drops to the floor upon witnessing the scene. Once again, he's brought face to face with the Demon King himself as he stands behind an injured Tanjiro. Muzan raises his fist to finish off Tanjiro, proclaiming that not even he could keep him away from the blue spider lily. Yoriichi stomps his feet to move towards Muzan. However, Kokushibo grabs his foot. Muzan releases his attack, but miraculously, before it hits Tanjiro, Muzan's whole torso is blown off by a hit, and it is revealed that Gyomei followed the duo on Kagaya's order. One by one, other Hashiras reveal themselves as they surround a flabbergasted Muzan. Upon seeing the situation he's in, Muzan bows his head down and lets loose a smirk. He declares that all of them have walked straight into their graves, as Nakime opens up portals to the Infinity Castle, and the Slayers fall into it one after the other. Yoriichi cuts off Kokushibo's arm, and both he and Giyu rush towards Tanjiro in order to aid him. However, all three of them end up getting sucked up in the Infinity Castle as well. Mitsuri, Obanai, and Tenjin fall straight into the room where Upper Moon 6 Daki and Gyotaro wait to assault them. However, this time around, all the Hashiras come prepared, and even before Gyotaro could separate his body from that of Daki, Tenjin summons his Demon Slayer mark and beheads him in an instant. Tenjin immediately starts boasting about his flashiness of his attacks. However, Obanai soon realizes that Gyotaro isn't dead yet. Gyotaro releases his blood demon art upon Tenjin, which he barely manages to avoid. Obanai decodes that both of them need to be beheaded together in order for them to die, and instructs Mitsuri to provide an opening. While Tenjin avoids Gyotaro's attacks, he's suddenly pulled away by Mitsuri's sword and slammed into Daki. As soon as both of them hit the floor, Obanai swiftly beheads the siblings in a single strike. Gyomei, Rengoku, and Shinobu land in another room where an old man begs for their forgiveness. As soon as Shinobu proceeds to check up on the old man, he bursts out and separates into his 4 forms, revealing that he is in fact the Upper Moon 4, Hantengu. Sekido unleashes lightning on the Slayers. However, Gyomei soon overpowers the lightning and drives an attack towards Sekido. Even before Karaku and the others could join in on the fight, Gyomei throws his flail towards Sekido and binds his neck. He pulls him towards himself and immediately severs his head. Rengoku, now free from the lightning, summons his Demon Slayer mark and takes on Aizetsu and Urogi alone. Overwhelming them with his fierce strikes, Shinobu tries to keep Karaku at bay, but she barely manages to avoid his air attacks. Soon, Shinobu summons her Demon Slayer mark as well and successfully impales Karaku with her Wisteria-ridden blade. Sekido realizes that the threat is too big for the 4 and ends up pulling all the other clones into him and transforming into Zohakuten. The Slayer regroups and Gyomei shows off his Demon Slayer marks to the others as he summons it on will. Accessing the transparent world, Gyomei reveals that the real body is not the one standing before them. Rather, it's a tiny little runt running around the room. He asks Rengoku to behead the main body while they stop Zohakuten. However, before they could even begin with the plan, Sanemi comes out of nowhere and beheads Hantengu himself. Moichiro soon enters the room explaining that they already beheaded the fish guy and that Muzan is the only one left. Meanwhile, Yoriichi searches for Muzan in the endless expanse of the castle while Giyu follows him, carrying an injured Tanjiro on his back. They are soon united with the other remaining Hashiras, and finally, they come across the main hall where Muzan stands all alone. Everyone takes a deep breath and charges towards the Demon King. However, a regenerated Kokushibo jumps in between and releases several strikes, forcing the Slayers to back off. Even with Kokushibo back in the game, Muzan is still outmatched, as he insists on aiming for Yoriichi and somehow getting hold of the blue spider lilies. Muzan and Kokushibo stand back to back. However, as the Slayers get ready to release their attacks, the Infinity Castle starts moving at random. It is revealed that Nakime has overloaded the rooms with energy in order for Muzan to escape. Yoriichi yells at the top of his lungs, and for the first time in his life, anger emerges on his face. He commands everyone to stop attacking, and he's going to end this fight here and now.
Yoriichi, with a speed even faster than that of lightning, paces towards the demon duo. Kokushibo and Muzan release their strongest attacks in an instant. However, Yoriichi, unfazed like a god, swings his sword, inflicting numerous slices on both of them. The castle stops rumbling and running haywire as Kokushibo and Muzan both fall to the ground in pieces. The blue spider lily in Yoriichi's pocket falls onto the floor. Muzan's severed hand tries to grab the one thing he has desired for millennia. However, as soon as he touches it, his hand vanishes off the face of the earth as his body turns into dust. All the demon slayers celebrate. However, suddenly the castle starts collapsing. Giyu determines that the whole castle exists beyond their mortal realm, and they are all going to perish along with it. However, as the slayers huddle up to say their last goodbyes, lightning strikes the castle once again. A few moments later, everyone gets up and finds themselves in the town where they were sucked into the castle. Everyone thanks God for saving them. However, a distressed Tanjiro reveals that Yoriichi wasn't transported along with them, and he most likely died inside. But with a wild twist of fate, Yoriichi wakes up in the forest once again. He immediately recognizes the forest, which is actually near the house he used to live in. He rushes towards his house to find Uta, and much to his surprise, finds her drying clothes in the front. Tears start falling from his eyes as he drops to his knees. But suddenly, a young boy grabs him from behind, and with a sweet and calming voice, welcomes his father back.
What would have happened if Tanjiro inherited the same abilities as Yoriichi? Once again, tragedy strikes and Tanjiro's family perishes due to Muzan's sudden appearance. Tanjiro, who is now a Demon Slayer mark holder, reaches his home after a long night, sensing the abnormality of the situation from miles away. His eyes dilate and he falls into a trance-like state as he witnesses his family mushed into a pile of flesh and bone, devoid of a single ounce of life. As Tanjiro stands there, lost in his own mind, suddenly Nezuko attacks him out of a blind spot. Tanjiro immediately punches down Nezuko without a second delay, still processing the fate his family has suffered. Tanjiro, who's grown to be a phantom of brute force, stares down his now demon sister, who struggles to get up after the blow to her neck. Tanjiro snaps out of the confusion and tries to lift Nezuko up. However, she attacks him with blinding rage and the thirst for his blood. Nezuko mounts Tanjiro, however, before he could do anything to stop her, Giyu arrives on the scene and kicks Nezuko off of Tanjiro. Tanjiro tries to go after Nezuko, but Giyu immediately sets off a kick to stop the young Kamado from getting devoured by his own sister. Tanjiro immediately reads the kick through Giyu's body movement, and much to the Hashira's dismay, dodges it. He rushes over to Nezuko and pins her down, screaming out that she needs a doctor. Giyu explains that his sister has turned into a demon and she'll start devouring humans soon if she isn't killed. Tanjiro whispers in Nezuko's ear that they'll get through this together and slams her down. He dashes towards Giyu and tries to slash him with his axe. Reading Giyu's movements does him no good and he's still too slow to beat Hashira. In a desperate attempt to subdue the water pillar, Tanjiro tackles Giyu down on the snow and notices that Nezuko has regained consciousness. He orders Nezuko to run. However, the memories of her past fill up Nezuko's mind, and she rushes to save her brother. She kicks Giyu away and starts guarding Tanjiro, surprising the water pillar. Tanjiro is relieved to see his sister protecting him, but before he could say anything, an axe hits Tanjiro's head and knocks him out. He wakes up and finds a muzzled Nezuko lying beside him. He looks around and spots Giyu sitting beside him as well. Tanjiro tries to get up and fight, but Giyu explains that he has never seen a demon protect another human, and that he's willing to give the siblings a chance, given that Tanjiro joins the Demon Slayer Corps. Thus, Tanjiro and Nezuko set out on their journey to meet Urokodaki and train under him to become Demon Slayers, so they could find a way to turn Nezuko back into a human. Learning under Urokodaki, Tanjiro soon realizes that the Hinokami Kagura is actually a form of breathing, and after just 3 months of physical training, he abandons the breath of water to perfect the Hinokami Kagura, prompting the former water pillar to think,
"Motherfucker, I'll chew his ass up."
Anyway, Tanjiro shows a staggering pace of growth, and within a span of 3 more months, he is prompted by Urokodaki to complete the mandatory rock-splitting feat. But deep down in his heart, Urokodaki knows that he's training a beast among men. Tanjiro once again lets his subconscious take over and feels the air in his lungs burn like the sun. And before even Urokodaki could turn and walk away, he not only splits the boulder in half, but shatters the two halves into rubble just with the sheer force of a single strike. However, as he does so, he notices 2 shadowy figures popping up behind the mountain fog. With a wide smile and tears of hope in their eyes, Urokodaki is thrilled, and even before Tanjiro could speak of the shadows, Urokodaki informs him that he could attend the final selection earlier than scheduled on a special request. Wasting no time, Tanjiro agrees to travel to Mount Fujikasane and enter the final selection all alone. He maps the mountain, one-shotting every demon on his way, crossing the mountain at an astonishing pace, and ends up running into the hand demon. The demon immediately recognizes Tanjiro's fox mask. He attacks Tanjiro without a second thought. However, Tanjiro starts cutting down the demon's arms like an Italian chef. prompting the demon to re-strategize. The demon tries to regenerate, but his wounds burn and slow down the healing. He moves his eyes to look over at Tanjiro, however he vanishes. And before the demon could even realize it, his head starts to fall towards the ground. Tanjiro, who's once again thrown into a trance-like state, snaps out of it and realizes that he's already killed the demon. Tanjiro recollects the mere seconds he was in that state and recalls that he could actually see the muscles of the demon move with his eyes. Tanjiro washes the thought out of his head and moves on to complete the final selection and pick his katana or... Tanjiro reaches Mount Sagiri and meets up with Urukadaki, who informs him that Nezuko is still asleep and that there's no telling when she'll gain consciousness. 2 weeks pass and Tanjiro's katana is delivered to him by none other than the head of the swordsmith village, Techin himself, along with Haganezuka. They eagerly wait for Tanjiro to unsheath the katana and hold it, and as he does, the sword turns bright red, making their jaws drop. Techin reveals that Tanjiro has awakened the rarest color of the katana, the one that was used by none other than the progenitor of the breaths himself. Suddenly, a Kasugai crow appears out of nowhere and announces that Tanjiro's first mission has been assigned, and he needs to head to a town near Mount Natagumo to investigate several disappearances during the night. Tanjiro reaches the town after several days of travel and stops at an inn for the night. He scales the market for some info on the recent kidnappings and overhears people talking about children getting kidnapped every week, and that today must be the day another one disappears. Tanjiro decides to stay guard for the night in hopes of encountering the demon. However, as he waits in pursuit of the possible assaulter, he is surprised to see the culprit. Tanjiro climbs onto the roof of the inn and notices a shadowy figure jumping off the roofs of the houses while carrying a child in his arms. Tanjiro follows the shadow and, using his transparent world abilities, realizes that the kidnapper is no demon, but a man dressed in all black. He immediately accelerates towards the man and snatches the kid from his arms. Before the kidnapper could even react, Tanjiro swung his sheathed sword and hit the man with the hilt, knocking him out. As the kidnapper regains consciousness, Tanjiro unmasks him, only to come across a shocking revelation. The culprit is revealed to be the big subscribe button to the channel, and Tanjiro indiscriminately slaps it to 20k, and I think you should too. Anyway, Tanjiro tries to unmask the man to find out his identity. However, he's tricked as the man unties himself while pretending to be unconscious. He lets loose a smoke bomb to escape Tanjiro's sight and vanishes into the dark. Tanjiro desperately looks around to find the man. However, as the smoke settles, the man takes off his mask willingly, revealing a pretty face and white locks. He introduces himself as Rei Tenjin, a shinobi. He vows that the next time they meet, the outcome won't be the same. As Rei leaves using another smoke bomb, Tanjiro focuses his attention on the kid and takes him to safety. He leaves the kid with the authorities along with a letter informing them about everything that has been happening in the town. He submits the report of the mission through the Kasugai Crow and moves on to his next mission, crossing Mount Natagumo in the process. However, as soon as night falls and Tanjiro starts closing down on the mountain, he starts to feel the distinguished pressure and silence surrounding the mountain, which are usually preceded by a demon attack. His hunch soon comes to life as he comes face to face with the Upper Moon 5 Rui. As soon as Rui spots Tanjiro with his ashy red hair, a shiver runs down his spine as the memory from Muzan cells makes his heart run like a 30-year-old mom on Black Friday sale. Haha. Tanjiro grips his sword, but before he could attack Rui, the father spider tackles him outside Rui's range. The father demon unleashes a barrage of punches, leaving no room for Tanjiro. Tanjiro manages to get on his feet, and as soon as he does, he dashes past the father demon and advances towards Rui. A confused father demon turns back, but before he can realize what was happening, his head falls off his shoulders. Rui, panicking at the sight of Tanjiro and his dreadful way of fighting, begins to weave his blood threads. But before he can unleash them on Tanjiro, he cuts off his arms. Rui cries in pain as his arms burn from Tanjiro's scarlet sword and decides to run away, leaving the battlefield. He turns his back towards Tanjiro, which turns out to be his biggest mistake, as Tanjiro uses the sunflower thrust to impale Rui onto a tree. Tanjiro begins to question Rui by pushing his sword deep into his chest. Soon, Rui's will begins breaking, but before he could utter a single word about Muzan, he crumbles onto the floor, turning into mush. Tanjiro is perplexed, trying to piece together what just happened. Meanwhile, at the Infinity Castle, all 11 remaining demon moons are summoned. Kokushibo is shocked beyond belief, as this is the first time in history that this has happened. The lower moons bow their heads, and one of them shakingly asks Muzan about why they have been summoned. Muzan, in a fit of rage, utters that he doesn't need the lower moons anymore, as they are of no use to him. He looks towards Kokushibo, who immediately gets up, and with one slash of his sword, absorbs all the lower moons. Muzan announces that the mysterious swordsman has returned, which forced him to kill Rui. This pushes Kokushibo into disbelief as he dismantled Yoriichi with his own two hands 400 years ago. Muzan declares a manhunt for the Scarlet Swordsman and declares that he won't leave the Infinity Castle until the threat has been dealt with. The upper demons start to bicker like usual, and watching the face of Kokushibo makes Akaza worry as he leaves the castle, promising that he'll be the one to put down the Slayer. The rest of the demons leave as well, leaving Kokushibo behind, who phases in and out of his dreams, recalling the horror of Yoriichi and his strength. Tanjiro reaches the headquarters of the Corps and is instructed to visit the Butterfly Mansion for a routine health checkup, where he runs into a boy who carries out the examination. As soon as he leaves the mansion, Tenjin appears out of nowhere and releases one of his smoke bombs, which Tanjiro easily avoids. Tenjin, with a smile on his face, lauds Tanjiro for his strength, but Tanjiro is not amused by this transgression. Noticing the glare on Tanjiro's face, Tenjin assures him that it was just a joke. However, his face turns serious as he states that Tanjiro would have been a Hashira by now if it wasn't for his low rank. Tanjiro starts walking away, but Tenjin once again stops his way and invites him to be one of his wives. Invites him on the mission to the Entertainment District, as it comes under his jurisdiction. Tanjiro immediately refuses. However, Tenjin piques his interest by mentioning that it could be the nest of an upper moon, as he could get information about the demon kind from it. Tenjin utters Muzan's name for the first time, which makes Tanjiro's blood boil. He grunts in disgust but soon catches his temper and agrees to go with the Hashira as his underling. Tenjin asks him to meet in 1 week, and as soon as he leaves, Tanjiro's Kasugai crow starts hovering above his head, yelling out that he's been summoned by the master. Tanjiro follows the crow and meets up with Kagaya. He bows down in respect and asks Kagaya about the reason behind the unusual meetup. Kagaya explains that he could make an exception to the Demon Slayer rules for him and promote him to the rank of Ashira. However, there is one catch. If he's willing to slay his demon sister, he'll be promoted to the ranks of Ashira and be awarded a compensation to his liking. Tanjiro takes a look at Kagaya and refuses in mere seconds, explaining that titles mean nothing to him. As he gets up to leave, Kagaya, with a slight smile on his face, lauds him for his resolve and wishes him well for his upcoming mission, which is to eradicate a demon that has been kidnapping young girls in the night. Tanjiro reaches the town and on the very first night runs into the swamp demon trying to abduct a girl. As the demon surfaces in front of him, Tanjiro decodes that it might get tough if he gets dragged back into his swamp, so he decides to end it in one sweep. He waits for the demon to close on the girl, and before his hands reach her, he beheads the demon for good. The girl leaves after thanking Tanjiro, but as he sheaths his katana, he's suddenly attacked by an unknown projectile from behind. Tanjiro manages to avoid them without much difficulty. However, as he turns to look at his new foe, he's awestruck as he notices no one behind him. Tanjiro grips his katana and takes a fighting stance, but suddenly, a few darts are thrown at him from the right. Tanjiro manages to avoid the darts and manages to get a look at them, deducing that they're made up of water. Tanjiro once again takes his form, and before the darts could hit him, this time, he runs in the opposite direction and cuts open a vase that is kept nearby. The demon, who's revealed to be none other than Gyoko, the schizophrenic, shows himself as he rises from another vase. Gyoko states that he'll be the one to bring Muzan Tanjiro's head as a present and rise above the ranks. He immediately transforms into his final state and attacks Tanjiro with all his might. Tanjiro manages to anticipate all of Gyoko's attacks using the see-through world and manages to cut his neck just a bit. Tanjiro starts falling into a trance-like state once again after he enters the see-through world. However, he controls his breath and voluntarily lets it take over. Suddenly, Tanjiro's head gets filled with the voices of Gyoko's blood moving in his veins and his scales rubbing against each other. He focuses all his attention on Gyoko's neck, and even before Gyoko could slither an inch closer to Tanjiro, he slides his sword against Gyoko's neck, cutting it off with godlike precision. As Gyoko's head falls off, Tanjiro interrogates him about Muzan's whereabouts, but Gyoko goes into a state of shock and is unable to speak a word, while slowly fading into dust. With only seconds of life left in him, Gyoko passes on Muzan's message to Tanjiro, stating that he and his sister's journey will soon come to a gruesome end. Tanjiro sheaths his katana and exits the town in order to reach the entertainment district as promised. He reaches Yoshiwara and meets up with Tenjin. Tenjin suggests that he and Tanjiro enter the district without their weapons, dressed as a civilian, which Tanjiro immediately turns down. They enter Yoshiwara, and as soon as Tanjiro sees Daki dressed as an Oiran, he immediately goes for his sword and cuts her down. Tenjin screams at him to stop behaving like a lunatic and blows a smoke bomb while pulling him aside to escape the guards who surround them. Tenjin and Tanjiro escape to one of the roofs, while at a considerable distance from Daki, Tanjiro states that he saw something in the Oiran, He further adds that the Oiran they saw wasn't a human, but rather a demon, which absurdly carried another stronger demon in her body. Meanwhile, Daki starts crying due to not being able to heal the wound, as the burn through the Scarlet Sword stops her healing. Suddenly, a huge whirlpool of wind surrounds Daki, throwing the crowd around the houses away and destroying everything. Tenjin and Tanjiro get shocked as they witness the real Upper Six, Gyutaro, exit Daki's body while simultaneously trying to console his crying sister. Tenjin immediately leaves to get his weapon, but Gyutaro spots him and dashes toward him while in mid-air. Tanjiro intercepts the attack and cuts through one of Gyutaro's sickles. Gyutaro curses Tanjiro, however he starts smiling as he informs Tanjiro that he has made his job easy by walking to his deathbed here in Yoshiwara. Tanjiro tries to willingly enter the trance-like state of selflessness and battle the upper demon this time around. Gyutaro rushes toward Tanjiro as the latter stands with his eyes closed in concentration. As soon as Gyutaro's sickles are about to pierce through Tanjiro, he opens his eyes and dodges the attack while simultaneously beheading Gyutaro in a matter of milliseconds. Tanjiro immediately strides towards Daki to kill her as well, but as soon as he moves forward, Gyutaro attacks him with another one of his blood sickles. Tanjiro senses something strange and looks back. He notices the Gyutaro sickle approaching him at a terrifying speed with no time for him to dodge. However, as soon as the sickle is about to hit him, Tenjin blocks it, effectively saving Tanjiro. Gyutaro overcomes his burn and immediately reattaches his head while rushing towards the Slayers. Daki, too, recovers and attacks Tanjiro from behind with her claw-like blade. Both the Slayers take a deep breath and rush in opposite directions. Tanjiro once again runs down towards Gyutaro, and Tenjin closes his distance with Daki. When they are about to strike down both their necks simultaneously, a gust of cold wind blows from the side, and the environment soon fills with the smell of death as Anya from Spy X Family arrives in the entertainment district. Okay, no more jokes. Doma enters the entertainment district with a wicked smile. He asks Gyutaro about the reason behind him hogging all the fun and not inviting him, while Gyutaro scoffs at him. Tenjin immediately sends out a Kasugai Crow for reinforcements, but Doma freezes it to death, stating that Tenjin's good looks don't match his notorious personality at all. Doma immediately starts attacking Tanjiro, and the battle turns into a 2v3 situation. Tanjiro instructs Tenjin to stall the two demons from before while he takes care of the icy idiot. Tanjiro once again falls into the selfless state, and in a wild turn of events lands a blow on Doma's face. A rattled Doma paces backwards as Tenjin starts battling the twins in an effort to hold them, until Tanjiro can cut down the new threat. Doma starts taking the fight seriously and immediately conjures a clone to fight Tanjiro, while maintaining his distance from the Scarlet Sword. Tanjiro immediately realizes Doma's intentions and rushes forward, ignoring his clone altogether. He once again unleashes a fiery slash and manages to cut Doma's shoulder. An irritated Doma falls back once again. He takes another look at Tanjiro, which makes the cells in his body aggravate as the memory of Yoriichi comes flooding in. Doma gives off a smirk and asks him to look over at his friend. Tanjiro glances over Tenjin, who's on the brink of collapse as the two demons start taking the upper hand. As soon as Tanjiro is deemed distracted by Doma, he summons an Ice Buddha statue in an attempt to surround himself with it in order to freeze Tanjiro to death. Tanjiro refocuses his attention and starts to chip away at the Buddha statue so that he can end the fight quickly. Meanwhile, Tenjin starts getting desperate against the duo. Suddenly, he is reminded of the fate his brother had to endure under his father and the way Kagaya rescued him from his sins. He yells out in desperation, causing a brief moment of calm in the fight. Gyutaro moves to finish the Hashira, but he disappears in front of his eyes. Gyutaro looks around and finds Tenjin standing on a rooftop with the head of Daki in his hands. Tenjin's breathing becomes heavy as a Demon Slayer mark appears on his shoulder. He once again vanishes, and as Gyutaro struggles to find him, he realizes the scenery is tilting. His head soon hits the floor, and as it rolls over, he realizes that he's being beheaded by Tenjin. Tenjin kicks Daki and Gyutaro's heads in opposite directions and proceeds to join Tanjiro in his fight against the upper two. Tanjiro, with his immense speed, inflicts hundreds of cuts on the Ice Buddha, effectively throwing Doma out of his ice shield. However, Doma smiles as soon as he is pushed out and starts conjuring another one around his body. But before he could cover up his neck, Tenjin comes in clutch from behind and beheads the demon with a precise cut. Not repeating the same mistake once again, Tanjiro begins to cut Doma's body into 1,000,000,000,000 pieces, so that he's effectively gone for good. Doma tries his best to regenerate his body, however he isn't able to muster enough energy to overcome his burns from Tanjiro's blade. Thus, the upper two succumbs to Tanjiro's will in a battle against innumerable odds. Tanjiro and Tenjin, flaunting their Demon Slayer marks, redirect their attention towards Gyotaro and Daki, who are regenerated and in utter shock. Upon witnessing the demise of Doma, both the demons decide to run away. But before they could do that, Obanai and Rengoku jump them from behind and behead them in sync. It's revealed that after the Kasugai Crow froze due to Doma's attack, the muscle mice ran all the way to the nearest Hashiras and fetched Rengoku and Obanai. Thus, a vital force of Muzan got cut into nothingness as the three upper demons met their fate under the Demon Slayer's sword. What would have happened if Tanjiro met Gyomei instead of Giyu when his family was slaughtered? As Tanjiro navigates through the forest, Gyomei appears out of nowhere, making Tanjiro tumble into him headfirst and hit the ground along with him. Nezuko wakes up by this time and immediately tries to attack Gyomei, who practically slaps the demon across the ground in order to protect Tanjiro. Tanjiro begins to wake up and witnesses Nezuko fighting Gyomei. Gyomei goes for his axe, however, Nezuko quickly rushes towards Tanjiro, which prompts the stone-breathing Hashira to smash parts of her legs. Gyomei decides that Nezuko would make it a good challenge for the final selection at Mount Fujikasane. However, as he goes over to grab her, she maneuvers her way towards Tanjiro in a bid to protect the young boy. This prompts Gyomei to rethink his whole life as he gets a flashback of the time he encountered a demon for the first time. He snaps back to reality and ends up knocking both Tanjiro and Nezuko out. When Tanjiro wakes up after a while, he finds himself in a cave along with Nezuko, who's tied up, and Gyomei, who has started a fire. Tanjiro gets up on his feet while his hands are still tied and gives a considerable smack to Gyomei's head, which snaps him back to reality. Gyomei looks around and explains that he could feel that something is off about his sister, and that she's behaving a lot differently than other demons, which has piqued his interest. He further adds that he knows a former Hashira who could hypnotize his sister and make him somewhat docile, while referring to none other than the former water Hashira Urokadaki Sakonji. He gives Tanjiro two choices: either forfeit his will and live his life wailing with the memories of his dead family, or take up arms against the very person who killed him in order to exact revenge and hopefully turn his sister back into a human. Tanjiro, seeing no other option, agrees with Gyomei as he informs them that he'll teach him personally due to his exceptional physical prowess, which he displayed with his headbutt. However, he'll have to entrust his sister to Urokodaki. The sun sets and Gyomei takes the brother-sister duo to Mount Sagiri when Nezuko is handed over to Urokodaki, who promises to take care of her while Tanjiro completes his training. Gyomei asks Urokodaki whether it would be better to inform Master Kagaya about this. However, Urokodaki reminds him of Kagaya's prowess, claiming that the master would already know of this ordeal. However, if Gyomei is willing to vouch for the demon girl, he might be willing to look the other way. Tanjiro bids farewell to a sleeping Nezuko, and he and Gyomei head towards Gyomei's area of protection. Upon reaching there, Tanjiro once again runs into a rude introduction with Genya, who has also been recently recruited by Gyomei due to being unable to learn breathing techniques, and thus Gyomei is teaching him a bit differently. Months pass, and just like Genya, Tanjiro soon builds a humongous physique, which doesn't really go well with his baby face. However, there is a much bigger change in his weapon of choice, which is a two-handed axe that also detaches from the handle and forms a chain-like attachment. 2 years pass, and Tanjiro gets ready to face the heat of the final selection. He quickly scoops over Mount Fujikasane. However, instead of the hand demon, Tanjiro is pitted against the swamp demon, who this time around was caught alive by none other than Giyu, while hunting for him in a remote town. Tanjiro overpowers the demon in every aspect and ends up traumatizing him, as during his final moments, Muzan's cells show him a glimpse of Yoriichi in the face of Tanjiro. The young demon slayer beheads the demon and moves on to complete the final selection along with Inosuke, who in the original story completed the challenge before anyone else could. Tanjiro tries to pick out his ore, however, as soon as he touches one of them, Inosuke barges in and picks that one before Tanjiro can in order to annoy him. This doesn't irk Tanjiro, as he wasn't going to pick that ore either way. Inosuke runs down the mountain while his crow follows him in desperation. Tanjiro concentrates on his olfactory senses and chooses the ore, which is similar to the one used by Gyomei. Tanjiro goes back to Mount Sagiri to take Nezuko along with him to Gyomei, where he finds Genya to be already present. The next day, Lord Techin arrives with Tanjiro's chained axe, which turns black, confusing everyone. Genya gets his wakizashi as well, however it fails to change color once again, which prompts Tetsuya to give him a secret compartment box to use as his behest, and gift a similar one to Tanjiro so that he could carry his sister. Tanjiro is then called upon by the Kasugai Crows and assigned his very first mission, to eradicate a suspected powerful demon in the Suzumi mansion. Tanjiro begins his journey and saves a girl from Zenitsu's harassment while they join up for the mission. Tanjiro drags Zenitsu inside the mansion where they meet Inosuke. However, this time around, Kyugai initiates his blood demon art much sooner, separating the Kamaboko squad. Tanjiro is instantly transported within Kyugai's reach, and an epic battle ensues. Being more buff and physically powerful than his original self, Tanjiro manages to get a hold of Kyugai and slam him onto the ground without even using his Nichirin axe. Kyugai realizes that he's facing no ordinary demon slayer and quickly gains his footing. Kyugai immediately starts spamming the drums on his body, making the mansion go haywire, and along with it, all the people inside it. Zenitsu, like usual, almost shits his pants. However, as he goes into his comatose state, he absolutely annihilates the tongue demon, while Inosuke takes care of the fat demon. Tanjiro starts to figure out the patterns of Kyugai's drums, and finally, when he's completely sure of all the pieces of the puzzle falling into place, he brings out his concealed axe, and with one swing initiates the axe's chain, which stretches all the way to the demon's neck and severs it without much difficulty. As the demon disintegrates into the air, Tanjiro chants a prayer taught to him by Gyomei to ease the soul of the departed demon. As the three demon slayers move out of the house and save the children inside, Inosuke challenges Zenitsu, who ends up avoiding him. However, Inosuke's behavior triggers Tanjiro a bit, and he ends up literally bitch-slapping him into the ground, and proceeds to bury the bodies of the dead children. After resting in the old woman's house in the night, the Kamaboko squad is then dispatched to take care of an unprecedented threat on Mount Natakumo. The slayers reach the mountain, however, contrary to the information, the three demon slayers find nothing but an empty forest filled with broken spider webs and strings. Tanjiro warns Zenitsu and Inosuke to heed caution, but the boar-headed, or may I say boar-minded, Inosuke just rushes off the deep end into the forest to find an enemy worthy of beating his ass to the ground. Suddenly, a loud noise zones out from the exact direction Inosuke ran off to, and a flying Inosuke follows the sound soon after. Inosuke slams into a tree, almost bloody to a pulp, barely alive. Zenitsu gets anxious as he informs them that he can hear a heartbeat approaching them. However, the sound of it seems preposterous, even for a demon. Tanjiro's eyesight wanders through the thick forest, and suddenly a chill crawls up his spine as he notices deep yellow eyes with the upper three written on them, piercing the thick fog. Before Tanjiro could turn back and warn Zenitsu, Akaza dashes through the trees and punches Zenitsu, taking him by surprise. Tanjiro sinks into disbelief, thinking about how his journey and the long years he spent training are about to come to a quick end. Akaza notices Tanjiro's Hanafuda earrings and gets Yoriichi's flashback. However, he snaps out of it and runs towards the young slayer. As he's about to hit Tanjiro, the fight is interrupted at the last minute as Gyomei arrives at the scene along with Obanai to take care of the situation and push Akaza back. Obanai runs to retrieve Inosuke and Zenitsu, who are barely alive, and put them to safety, while Gyomei holds back Akaza.